Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. We are going to be talking about cross-functional collaboration, breaking down the silos and putting the customer first. When silos lead to 40% decrease in productivity, 86% of employees believe that poor communication and lack of collaboration are the biggest reasons for workspace failures. So both companies and employees understand that silos are detrimental. However, most transformations still fail or slow down because cross-functional collaboration just does not happen. My name is Olga Potaptseva. I'm the CEO of ECC, and we have had many successes facilitating cross-functional work with our clients. And today we want to share our approach with specific examples, insights, and real-life stories from our esteemed guests. While we're doing the introductions, please tell us, do silos in your organization damage communication and productivity? So let's start with introducing my panel, which I'm very grateful for joining. Claire, would you like to go first? Amazing Claire, the founder of Women in CX, my dear friend. Tell us a bit about yourself and why breaking down silos is important to you.
Sure. Well, thanks first of all, Olga, for having me today. It's really great to be part of this conversation. Yes, I'm Clare Muscutt, the founder and CEO of Women in CX, the world's first online membership organization for women working in customer experience and technology. But my background is absolutely as a practitioner, so leading customer experience transformation and CX design in FTSE 100 organizations in the UK, up to and including my last role in corporate, which was head of customer experience at Sainsbury's. And I think really why it's important to me relates back to exactly what you've just talked about. And in my work in CX design, I think breaking down silos absolutely helps to accelerate innovation, because if you're encouraging knowledge sharing, sparking creativity and faster problem solving through working together, that's fundamentally critical to being able to make progress at pace. And secondly, because quite simply, it increases efficiency, because when you start to really dig into this work and cut across the silos, you find how much duplication of effort and resources is actually happening, and the opportunities to save so much time and money. So yeah, it's really, really important to me.
Really looking forward to hearing more of your stories, Claire. Claire's led some amazing work at Sainsbury's and certainly applied everything she knows within Women in CX community. Let me now introduce Paul. Paul is Customer Experience Executive at Lenovo Africa, and I'll hand over to Paul. Paul, please tell us how you've led cross-functional work and why breaking down silos is important to you.
Thank you very much, Olga, for inviting me into this space. It's such an honor to be here. Good afternoon, good evening to our viewers. My name is Paul Ngunyi, and I am the Service Delivery and Customer Experience Manager for Lenovo East Africa. I also help businesses and professionals as a productivity coach. I am based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm really looking forward to this great discussion today. And breaking down silos is very important to me because the principal purpose of any business is profitability, productivity, and growth. Those three things cannot happen without a very well optimized system. And what silos do is that they make it very difficult for an organization to be optimized in performance. And therefore, every leadership, every organization need to look forward to bringing down all the walls to ensure that there is effective and efficient communication that empowers and enables productivity, profitability, and growth of the business. Thank you, Olga.
Excellent. I love that practical and commercial outlook, and silos, while a human element, they certainly do influence productivity. So we'll deep dive into that. And last but not least, Michele, and I always introduce, and will never get tired of introducing Michele as the most human-centric leader out there. And Michele is Director of Customer Operations Management at Alexion AstraZeneca Rare Disease. Michele, please tell us a few words about yourself and why breaking down silos is important to you.
So first of all, I had to emergency use my mobile because I couldn't get in through my laptop. So anyway, yes. So my role in AstraZeneca rare disease is obviously to make sure that our customers, our patients, get the drug all the time when they need it. So it's quite almost like an emergency service all the time. And having silos would have is a showstopper, obviously, to get that level of service. So how did we manage to break down the silos? Was actually using the incredible tools of customer needs survey. Because we wanted to get the needs from our customers right into Alexion to understand what we were doing well and what we were doing wrong, and use that experience and use that feedback to actually drive the change inside our company. So rather than a department, which is a silo, dictating what is best for the company to do in terms of improving service, we actually got the feedback from our customers, and that is a undisputable, let's say, a parameter that then leads the way to the company changing and doing projects to improve the service. So let's say the way we broke the silos was to actually go outward, not look at our inside the company, but look outwards towards our customers. What did our customers need? What did the customers think of us? And how could we improve that? And that moved mountains within our company, breaking down those silos and making sure that we were all working towards the same hymn book. So that's really, in a nutshell, what I would say has been a success story in terms of breaking silos.
And we will certainly dive deeper into this story. It's what I take out from this is that already one first tip for how to break down silos is to listen to the customer and have the customer guide you. But before we go any further with the how, I'd like to share a framework that we will be using for our discussion today, a sort of a success formula for all of our listeners out there. And the success depends on diagnose, design, deliver, and measure. There's supposed to be a slide coming up. I hope you see the slide. I don't from my end. But let's assume that you do. And the diagnose phase is about understanding how bad are the silos. We all know that organizations are created siloed to a certain extent. And there is a reason, because there's functional specialization. Right? So some people know everything about sales, some people know about marketing, some know about operations, and there is a reason to put them into those functions. But how well or how not well they collaborate is a question. So if you wanted to understand how siloed your organization is, feel free to take our free assessment, a link to which we are posting in the comments. I believe we have difficulties showing the slide itself, but we will make sure to send you this success formula later on. For now, you can follow the link and take the assessment. And the following stages we will cover off during the discussion. They will be design, deliver, measure. Before we move on, I'd like to ask Claire, so how would you define silos? And you are a specialist in customer-centric design. Do the two work together, and how, if they do?
Sure. So I think probably a really clear and straightforward way to think about it. First of all, silos. We were to define what they are. They essentially occur when teams or departments in an organization are operating independently of one another. And we've already talked about a lot of the outcomes that happen as a result of that. So poor communication, limited collaboration, and very importantly, inconsistent customer experiences. So I think the root cause of it is that essentially each of the silos is focused inwardly. So very similar to what Michele was just talking about there, prioritizing their own goals as a department or a team rather than the overall customer journey, for example. So customer-centric design, CX design, call it what you will, service design, there's lots of different words that have been used to capture exactly what the methodology and process is, but essentially it's the practice of designing products and services and experiences around customers' needs, expectations, and behaviors. So, Michele talked about how he did his research in order to find out what those things are. But as part of the process of customer-centric design, it really does involve breaking down the organizational barriers to ensure that the customer's perspective is considered and helps to guide decisions that are being made, particularly around product and service. So in terms of how they're linked, they're intrinsically linked. So silos exist, experience design is going to suffer because of the internal fragmentation that creates the disconnected experiences in the first place. But the flip side of that is if you're able to break them down, encourages teams to collaborate, enabling seamless integrated experiences potentially that actually genuinely put the customer first rather than the team or departmental priority. So if I was to summarize that, I'd say breaking silos equals better customer-centric design.
Okay. And does customer-centric design equals breaking silos? So if we start with the customer and we design for that, would it facilitate better collaboration between silos? Or
Yes,
can we do it either way?
Yeah, so I think for me, like experience design is a process that facilitates better experience design and breaking down barriers and silos through the process that you go through. But essentially, like customer-centric design or service design enables you to bring in the perspective of the customer, who they are and what they need, but also the operational perspective, what we're actually trying to design for, including the organizational strategic goals. And the reality of the operation that you're going to be creating those changes within, plus also the perspective of things like the brand itself. What do we want to offer our customers, and what would we do differently to other organizations? So I think by being able to, for example, in what I would call discovery phase, that you gave a different name to. I can't. I didn't see the slide, so I can't remember it.
Diagnose.
Picture to recall. Diagnose. Customer is one of the elements that you'd be looking to seek to understand in research. Who is our customer? What do they need? But equally, you'd be understanding what is our stakeholder map across those silos in the first place, and what are their priorities and goals. Where is that friction existing today? And also understanding the employee perspective, what's actually happening within the operation today that means those silos are actually becoming problems for the humans within that. So for me, I think that discovery phase, not just thinking about the customer, which is critical, but also considering the stakeholders and the employees' experience within that, is the pyramid, or like holy triangle, as I would call it, of discovery that will set you off on the right footing for any transformative experience design projects that come along, and the way in which you work together through those things by, for example, understanding current state through things like journey mapping activities. I know, Olga, you've worked on some client projects of my clients with me. On that phase is the action, the activities that mean people come together to do the things like diagnostic activities.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, isn't it? We also have a question in from the chat, which I'd like to address to Paul. What kind of commitment do we need, and what are the most common challenges in actually making this happen? Like, theoretically, we all understand silos are not helpful, but once we've designed and we've given people the frameworks, do you have any insights for us, Paul, on how to facilitate that collaboration?
Thank you, Olga. And that's a very good question because it helps us reflect and see the different means that we can overcome the challenges that come with collaborations between functions or between departments. And on top of my mind, I think of a number of challenges, but let me narrow down to probably two or three. And from experience, I realized that one of the biggest reasons that hinders communication between departments is what we call inherent or disjointed objectives. That means if we have a leadership in an organization and this organization is doing their own objectives in every silos, then what happens is that everybody focuses within their spaces and forgets to get to know what's happening in the other departments. And at the end of the day, that brings a lot of inefficiencies, and the person that suffers most is the customer and the business outcomes. So, for instance, you'll note that in organizations, departments, for instance, operations department could decide to focus on, let's say, cost cutting. And sales department, for instance, could decide to focus on, expansion of the markets. Now, these two are objectives, and they are great objectives for an organization, but you can see they are already conflicted because one objective is thinking of cutting down on cost, and the other objective is thinking on using a little more money to expand the business. And if the heads of departments or the entire organization from the top does not sit together to harmonize and optimize and get a good balance between the costings, the spendings, and the actions that need to be taken, then there is likely to be a lot of confusion within the organization. I also note that many organizations forget that customer experience, for instance, is an objective and a responsibility of everyone. And I was checking the other day and I was noting that a large majority of organizations do not differentiate between customer care and customer experience. Many people think that the departments that do customer care or customer service are actually the only ones responsible for customer experience. So, in such incoherent leadership in the organization, then it becomes very difficult for collaboration to happen. Another big reason that I, from experience, has resulted in lack of collaboration between organizations is resistance to change. If departments have a particular way of doing things and they consolidate this for a long period of time, a number of times it becomes quite difficult to penetrate into each of the organizations. And the reason is because change is usually not very good for human beings. Human beings would always want to avoid change. And if one is having a narrow view of their department, they are likely to, of course, think they are excelling their department, but it is overall hurting the organization and overall hurting the customer because some of the objectives do not even have customer in mind. And of course, the lack of awareness by the workforce on the benefits of collaboration also goes to add to the harm that lack of collaboration between silos take place. So it is important to have leadership get aligned. It is important to have people change their attitude and perspectives toward change and relating and collaborating, even when sometimes it's not comfortable. And it is also very important that people get trained on a continuous basis on what it is that they need to do and behaviors and attitudes they need to change to collaborate better.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Paul. And Helen's comment from the chat echoes what you've just said. That even when people do have customer in mind, different departments may have very different goals. And I think you've responded to the question already. So, what's your take on a customer-centric OCRIS and a framework to break silos? Michele or Claire, do you have anything to add to respond to this question?
Yeah. Yes, I jump in. Yes. So I think OKRs are wonderful things. I use them all the time. In terms of where I think we need to kind of position this conversation in a broader sense is like strategy is a key component for any organization in needing to be clear about where we're heading and the purpose of what we're trying to do before we head into, for example, design. So having that kind of alignment around, well, what is our organizational strategy? Where does customer feature within that? And what are our organizational goals and key results that we're going to deliver as a result of whatever work we undertake, I think is fundamentally critical. So I don't think it's a silver bullet or a panacea, nor do I think customer experience design is a panacea. I think having a combination of really I can't think of a better word than just great. A combination of different tools and approaches that enable you to be customer centric in different ways, but being customer centric at a strategic level, being customer oriented from a performance point of view, being able to have measures and metrics that are also customer orientated is fundamental. And I think it's a combination of those things that organizations that deliver the greatest performance and transformative change are able to do that in a number of ways rather than just one.
Totally agree with that. The objectives and key results alone without the strategy is confusing, I'd say. Michele, do you have any view on that?
Yeah. Well, yes, I just wanted to comment on the silos. Silos are as big or as small, depending, as was pointed out, on the strategy of the company. If the company has a clear strategy, silos tend to be just micro silos that can be broken very easily. If a company is not at a mature level of strategy, let's say, that doesn't have that maturity, you can have bigger silos. Now, Paul was referring to completely two different objectives in some departments. Like one is cutting, and the other one is gaining more customers, right? I believe that it depends on the kind of company that you are in and the maturity in the let's say in the voyage towards customer experience that you're in, is how big and how small those silos are. So I just wanted to comment that not all silos are enormous. Some are very big and easy to spot. Some others are quite small and probably take a little bit more time to engage. But yes, so when we talk about silos, it we need to refer to different kind of silos according to the maturity of the company.
Yeah, not all silos are created equal.
Yes.
I guess that gives us hope. Not all of
Yes.
them have to be tackled in the same way
Yes.
as well. And that swiftly moves us to the next component in our success formula is design. And here we focus on cross-functional by design operating model. And that model leverages the agile journey management teams, and those teams are structured with members from various departments, often organized around specific value streams or customer journey stages, which, if you think it through, is a big change to most operating models. It requires customer lifecycle understanding, customer value management, knowing the moments of truth, having those agile teams in the first place. And this is different to how most organizations are structured. these days, and it requires change management effort, just like Paul mentioned before. It's not an easy topic at all on how to organize this. We will cover bits of it during the session today, but we promise to send you a link to some silo combat resources to help you out. But in the meantime, let us know in the comments, do cross-functional teams in your organization engage in customer journey mapping? And if you see customer journey mapping as an important tool in this. So from design perspective, a question to all participants here, what do you believe is necessary to put in place in order for people to know how to collaborate? We mentioned journey maps, we mentioned knowing the customer, knowing the life cycle, moments of truth, knowing the employee needs, KPIs, strategic objectives. What is the system here? What would you recommend people focus on? Paul, do you want to start? Or Claire, you've raised your hand. Please go ahead and we'll switch to Paul after.
Oh, sorry. So I think there's an important component missing here, which is like, can you move directly from where you are today to a customer-centric operating model? Question. And the bigger the organization is, the harder that's going to be, the bigger the change you propose, the greater resistance you face. So from a design perspective, I'd always advocate, working cross-functionally, breaking down the silos and barriers through understanding the current state would be where you'd use things like journey mapping to identify what's not working today, involving teams in getting closer to the customer research that you've done to understand needs and expectations and experiences. But the thing that's really missing for me there is, what is the future state design that we're working towards? So when we are missing not just the technology roadmap, but the actual vision for this is the future state for our customers, our products or services. Ideally, this is the experience we want to create. Being able to then start to work towards a future state and build a more customer-centric operating model that over time can kind of make the improvements that we know need to be made today, whilst also working to the future. It's a more of a reverse engineering process than it is a reorganization and redesign of the people before the redesign of the future state that we're trying to work towards. So I think there's like organizational alignment is required, strategic alignment. We've agreed that this is the direction we're going in. Minimizes some of the friction and the disruption, because the silos will be broken by the nature of the fact that we're all in agreement about what we're trying to build towards. So I think I just had to interject there and say, I think the most important component of design is actually within that future state, that will go on to help ensure that the change and the transformation that happens is going to happen in not only a better way, but more organised way, because people know what they're pulling towards and decisions make more sense. For example, on technology roadmap, when people have been involved in the architecture of that future state design.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've seen your work in action. It is proven to lead companies to the right, or at least, consistent way of thinking. We never know what's going to be right in future, but having that vision is so important in aligning decisions, as you say. And I've seen how well you do that and unite leaders at that very top to say, okay, this is our common ground. This is how we're going to take decision, and this is what we are striving towards. Paul, going back to you, anything you want
yeah. So I think thank you, Olga. My key words would be the optimization of the ecosystem. That's always very important to think about, because when a system is optimized, then no one gets left behind. So after knowing the needs of the customer, because that's key, then the next thing to ask is what resources do we have? And I like what Michele says, that not all organizations are the same. They are different organizations, needs are different, resources are different. And therefore, it is incumbent upon the management or whoever it is that is responsible to designing the solution that will optimize the system to keep in mind of the needs of the customer, the resources that are in place to meet those needs. And resources are in different formats, human resource, financials, and very many other things in between. And then that will help design a solution that will not end up overburdening one side, because if we, of course, all the time being champions of customers, would want to do the very best that we can to ensure that we meet the needs of the customer and we give the very best customer experience. And but that's not always possible. But what is the nearest that we can with what is available? So for me, a very clear understanding of the needs and a very articulate designing of the solution, given what is available, becomes very important in optimizing the ecosystem to support every component of our business.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. Michele, are you with us? Can you hear us? Apologies, there have been connection problems today. So while Michele is rejoining us, it's great to hear in the comments that people do use cross-functional journey mapping practice as a foundation to start breaking down silos, and testify that it leads to innovative and practical ideas. So thank you, Abdul, for sharing that comment. We totally agree that it creates alignment across units, and of course it's easier than to present a unified action plan. So that's amazing to hear that you're already using this practice and hopefully learning more things, what you can practically do to start breaking down silos. And I'll come back to Marina's question in the next section, which is all about delivery. So our third success pillar is delivery, that comes after diagnosis and design. And during the delivery phase, we find it's very important to focus on change management effort, which assumes two-way communication. And we have had not one, but almost in all projects, the transformation effort starts with one-way communication, where the leadership says, this is the bright future, this is where all of us are going to go to. And on the surface, everyone agrees that that's a great idea and that sounds like a good plan. But once you start diving deeper into it, all sorts of fears come up. Like, oh, will this transformation actually mean I don't have a job anymore? Or will I have to put a lot more effort into it? Why do you want me to share with all these other departments? They just bring in challenges all the time. You're making my job more complicated. Or do I actually have the skill set? Will I be able to cope? So it's not enough to just talk to people. It's also important to hear before we start driving cross-functional collaboration, supported by shared KPIs, appropriate technology and data, and that holistic view of the customer journey. So, Michele, as someone who's led customer-centric transformation at your company, what specific tips for customer operations and transformation teams do you have to help them be successful?
So the first step I would say is to have a common goal to make sure that there is a common goal across the company. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have worked always for pharmaceutical companies where the patient is always key, and therefore it's easy to go from patient first to customer first. So it's almost embedded in the industry that you need to serve the customer in a way. But the common goal is very important. The second tip is, as I said at the beginning, is to actually make sure that the customer feedback is what drives the change in your company. So it's not what you are saying, as in my case, as the leader of a custom operations, or what any department says. It's actually what the customer says. So once you have the actual customer saying it, it's almost like an independent voice coming from a third-party voice, and independent, that is sort of saying, this is what we need, and this is, let's get our act together and move towards that goal. So I would say, as probably the best tip is to actually use the customer feedback as a great tool to work inside the company and break those silos and do the revolution that you need to do. That is what I would say. Yes.
I'd add to this, if you allow us, to involve people from the very start. We've seen this
Yes.
in projects we've
Yes.
done together, that despite us being on the customer listening journey for a while, other teams who were not with us from the start found it very challenging to jump from not being aware
Yeah.
at all to being fully collaborative for the sake of meeting
True.
customer goals.
True.
So some, even with that, some change management was required, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
And that kind of touches on the role of leadership. And Marina in the comments is suggesting that this traditional hierarchical leadership model often leads to people not wanting to collaborate cross-functionally, and there's no encouragement to build horizontal connections. Do any of you see evidence of that, and most importantly, have tips for how to either become a more collaborative leader, or if you're not a leader, to encourage your leaders to think differently?
Yeah, I would like to say that leadership is a very important component of business and customer experience. We are always told that the most successful business and actually the most successful leaders are the most adaptive. And we are in a business environment that is always changing. And if leadership and business strategies do not change, then businesses will be swept off the way. And therefore, looking into what is working, what is not working, what needs to change on a frequent basis is very important for leadership. And I can't agree more with my colleagues who have indicated that the key pointer to the direction that need to be taken is the customer. What does the customer want? How do they feel? And this is important to therefore pick their feedback. And when we are not able to pick their feedback, it's important for leadership to also cross-check with the rest of the teams in the various departments, in the various levels, so that it is not just a top-down method of management, where the management says, this is what we think and let's deploy, and a lot of resources are wasted before realizing that something was wrong. So adaptive leadership is really important, and it should all start with, if for me, great leadership should always listen to two very important people. This is the customer through the tools that are available to harness data from the customer, and the employees, because these are the people, particularly the first line workforce that are meeting the customer, that are hearing the complaints, that know what's happening in the market intelligence. It's always very important. So let leadership be adaptive, and business will adapt moving forward as well.
Yes, thank you. Is it possible? Have you seen great examples of leaders who are open-minded and able to adapt quickly? Again, question to the panel.
I was going to say, I could tell a story about how, in my experience, when I was working back in the corporate days, in terms of delivery, how, so some of my tips. So I think one thing that is fundamentally important, and to Marina's point, love Marina, by the way, hi. Those hierarchical traditional structures exist, don't they? And I don't see them going anywhere. So I don't think we're going to wake up and have a revolution in leadership any day soon. That would mean that overnight we end up with the kinds of customer-centric leaders in every seat on the board that would make our lives a lot easier. So in my experience, what I found really helpful is like there's board level engagement in what you're trying to do, but there's C-suite level sponsorship. So somebody, an important power core on that table, ideally someone like the chief operations officer, would be the person who is in charge of the leadership around whatever change that you're trying to make from a customer-centric point of view. My example would be from working in supermarkets and trying to enact a huge change in one particular department within the supermarket chain, where there was like so many different stakeholders in head office that we're going to need to collaborate together, but also over 1,000 stores that all had their own regional area and general store management. So that sponsor's role on the board is actually about championing cross-functional collaboration and breaking down the silos at their level. And the sponsor that I had in this particular project, that I can't go into too much detail about, essentially enacted 3 divisional directors to be the next level down sponsors. And they were from 3 very juxtaposing functions. So customer, operational excellence, and the retail leadership of a third of the entire trading estate, plus the trading director. So each of those people had the power to enact cross-functional collaboration within their teams. So they started role modeling essentially from the top to the director level. And then when it came to like engaging the store teams, it was then about empowering the regional managers to be the leaders and the champions of the change that was going to be happening as well, and handing over as much operational accountability, I guess you'd say, for rolling something forward, particularly when it comes to training and engagement, that devolving that directly to, for example, the store management lead. Because I think one of the big barriers that I've certainly seen stop a lot of people in their tracks has been the ivory tower thinking and delivery, and then the operational execution of that. So to what extent, from a leadership point of view, can that cross-functional collaboration be role modeled, and that cross-functional team way of working? So, for example, with a project manager and representatives from each part of the organisation that's going to need to change at head office, working together to do something, and then democratising the actual delivery into operations so that they feel a genuine sense of ownership for it, would be, I suppose, my hot tips on what kind of change that means for leadership. So it doesn't mean that, the finance director suddenly going to become customer centric in their decision making, the CFO. But if the COO, who has the majority responsibility, can start to embody some of that, you've got a much greater chance of enacting change. And I think it's a better way of thinking to act within the operational reality that you face and the organizational reality you face. But if you can just get that one sponsor to start with, to be that person that says we need to work together to solve this, and use their direct influence to say, right, you 4 at director level, I need you to help role model this. And, seeing that change from above is certainly one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced in my career, in making change land and sustain.
great tip, and it also focuses on your area of control. It's possible to identify a leader who would be on the same page and work with them if you're not in a leadership role, and similarly if you are in the leadership role, find allies within your environment and kick off where you can. Let's say that. Michele, I know you would have also tips on leadership and empowerment, which I think are very valuable.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say from my experience, my latest experience, which you know very well, we reversed a little bit the flow. So we had a champion of customer centricity, which was not at the very top of the organization. I was actually one of the tools that brought the customer centricity ideas into the organization, but through my direct manager, who was a believer in this, in customer centricity and the way forward for the organization. Anyway, this being champions and advocating the customer centricity within the company, which, as I said, is very patient centric, was so strong that the customer centricity idea went to the very top, to the leadership, to the point that after 1 or 2 years of implementing our customer needs survey, all the tools that we've implemented so far, we managed to get the customer needs score as a key performance indicator of our enterprise. So the customer needs score went from a completely unknown KPI to a very important KPI of the enterprise. And I would say that this is working from down upwards in the organization. Obviously, now that this has become a key component of the enterprise, of the vision, it is absolutely much easier to bring this forward, like Claire was saying, because now there is a champion from the top that is let's say that is harvesting the idea of customer centricity, which brings let's say the clearance of the various barriers and the various silos.
And that's a nice bridge to our last component in the success formula is measure. And do you believe that introducing customer needs score is a good measurement for cross-functional collaboration and breaking down silos?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is a measure. It is a measure. Thank God we have customer needs score rather than the usual scores that we have been measuring customer satisfaction so far, because it not only gives you a score, but it also gives you the tips from the customers. What do they actually need, and how are you performing towards those needs? Therefore, they're measurable actions. They're actually actions that you need to take to improve those needs. And I believe that that is absolutely a revolution, I would say, to the customer centricity scoring.
Mm-hmm. So it's not just about the score, and that's what I really want the participants to hear. It's not about hitting a number. It's making sure that we develop initiatives based on customer needs and then track their delivery.
Exactly.
Paul, and from your perspective, have you found any successful measures to track the impact of customer-centric initiatives and cross-functional work?
Yes, in my thinking, there are two very important measures of initiatives that we put to enhance customer centricity. And one is certainly from the customer perspective, and the other one is on business performance. So for every initiative that is put in place to enhance customer experience, it needs to be measured. And that is why even before measuring and tracking happens, it's very important for the initiatives being put in place to be tested for relevance. And that is why working and putting initiatives in place and need to start from the customer. And when we are not sure, we actually need to check with the customer by just carrying out customer survey that will feed into the initiatives, or that will actually guide the design of the initiatives that need to be done. And then tracking of the performance of the initiative or the entire system is important. And we have for how the system work or how initiatives works, I have found ourselves use very effective performance management systems that will always ensure that, one, clarity of initiative is there, two, ownership is there, and three, the measurement of success is clear. So stuff like customer satisfaction surveys come very, very handy in testing any initiative that has been put in place to improve customer satisfaction. Net promoter scores, other surveys that can help know how the customer feels about the business. But also from business side, it's easy to measure if an initiative had a good resultant effect on business by measuring things like sales volumes, profitability, customer retention, the growth of the organization. So ensuring the right initiatives informed by customer data and measured through a performance management system to ensure nothing is left hanging, and eventually hearing what the customer has to think about the whole initiative is important. And obviously, the reason we want to wow the customer is that we want business results. And what a better way to measure business results than seeing the profitability and the growth of the business.
Yeah,
I love
definitely
the
more on
connection.
that. I'm definitely more on that side of the fence. Like with things like metrics, I can see the comments that are coming through in the chat as well. I very much am of the belief that scores are going to take care of themselves, but when you're trying to get initiatives, effectiveness of it to be evaluated, for me it is much more about the commercials, because the person you're going to need to engage is the CFO if you want to roll something out or you want to get greater investment in it. So one tip from me is just to really think like in terms of pilots and experiments within the changes that you're trying to make, and literally just measure everything, because quite often you get unexpected, unintended positive consequences. So setting up a baseline metric for a number of measures, including things like colleague engagement, all of your financial metrics, things like traffic, things like throughput, things like efficiency measures, and actually testing a customer-centric initiative and seeing what happens as a result of doing that. I think, being able to demonstrate with real data why you should invest in something is way more powerful than coming up with an idea and saying, I think we should roll this out everywhere. Go and do it at a small scale, measure everything as a baseline, measure everything after an agreed period of time, and extrapolate what the financial impact could be if you were to scale that up, would be my advice on how to make that progress and get buy-in.
Couldn't agree more. And my last question on measurements is inspired by Roy's comment, and I'd like to link it back to cross-functional work. Sometimes we don't know how many teams actually work cross-functionally and how many are forgotten. You don't know what you don't know. So have any of you had experience of having number of people involved in journey mapping or number of departments participating in customer-centric initiatives or number of agile teams working cross-functionally? Have any of you had any of those as a KPI and as an indicator of becoming less siloed and more cross-functional? I'm referring to a comment. When we say cross-functional, are there any functions in the organization that are consistently left out?
I think it's about relevance, though, isn't it? So setting up a project where absolutely everybody in the world and his wife or her wife are involved could actually be detrimental to the ability to work at pace. So think about stakeholder mapping initially to identify who are the affected stakeholders and how do we ensure we've got the right representation in the room to start this off right and to continue to engage or to build a project team from is a more important question than how many, or just like trying to quantify that, because at the end of the day, the right people are the right people, aren't they, to enact and create change. So I would just be wary of trying to put a volume metric around that as a success factor.
Thank you, Claire. Michele, what's your view?
Well, we've never measured how the silos, how good we were in breaking those silos. I would say it's just the positive effects is just a measure of how good we are doing together. I have to say that one of the key points of breaking the silos is actually to have more cross-functional meetings together, having more common goals together. But no, we never, in my experience, we never measured how well we have, there's no KPI to say how well we have broken those silos. It's just the result.
Yeah, stakeholder feedback as well. Because I know when we piloted this way of working to deliver change in the big businesses I worked in on the business side, it was palpable. People were talking about it at every level of the organization. We need to work more like this. So again, kind of thinking back to the discovery phase initially, what is the current state of cross-functional working through enacting a project or a program? What is the change that happens, and being able to re-interview perhaps some of those senior stakeholders or stakeholders at every level about how does it feel differently today in comparison. It might not be a number that you get to, but you'll certainly get something qualitative and something that you can measure, but maybe it's just not a KPI in the traditional sense that we measure it. But a lot of what I see the impact is actually in colleague engagement. So a lot of businesses have an annual survey and they're quite often asking, is our direction clear? Are we all, do we feel like we're part of a team? Do we feel like we know what we're trying to achieve? And when cross-functional collaboration is working really well and that clarity and agreement and strategic priority, it filters down pretty quickly into employee satisfaction, for example, in those metrics that are about culture and ways of working.
Very good point. I wish we could continue. It's getting more and more interesting. We are unfortunately almost at our scheduled time, but I'm very passionate about creating this organizational harmony and breaking down silos and listening to the customer. If any of our participants want to discuss this further, feel free to book a session with me. I'm always happy to talk on the subject and exchange insights. And before we wrap up, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to summarize your key takeaways from this session. And I give you a special challenge to do this in 7 words.
Mine's ready.
Do I have any volunteers?
Mine were collaborate, align, prioritize, experiment, measure, share, celebrate.
Wow, that
Very
was
good.
really good. That was really good.
Okay.
I can use less word, but it's have a common goal. Make sure that you have a common goal.
Good one. Paul? Now they
I
made it
would
harder for
say,
you.
I think I'm always so into business results. So I would say drive excellent customer experience for desired business growth or achieve the desired business growth.
Very good. Oh, thank you. Such diverse, such valuable perspectives. I appreciate you making it very practical for our audience. This is what they love. This is why they come to this LinkedIn Live events. My sincere gratitude to all of you who've joined us today as panelists, as participants, and also to ECC team behind the scenes who is supporting and facilitating all the technology and operations behind this. As I say, always happy to continue the conversation and looking forward to seeing you here next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.